Welcome to episode 5 of the LAN Partners Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, and with me is Matt.
Hello.
And Dave.
Hello.
We got a special episode for you today. We want to start having a special feature at the first episode of every month where we review a retro game. So Dave's going to go ahead and give us a review of the Legend of Zelda on the NES. Matt's going to give us a review of Final Fantasy 15. I have a review of Sniper Elite 3. Our discussion topic for today is if Sega came back with a console, what would it be and could it compete? We have a big news story to get to, and our list for the day is the top 3 lead characters in any game. We are just 3 guys who have full-time jobs, families, and other hobbies, but we also love to game. We game for an hour or 2 every day. We just want to share with you our experiences playing these new and old games in case you're in the same spot as us where your gaming time is limited. If you're somebody who can relate to us, please download the podcast by Apple app, Stitcher, or go on to iTunes and hit subscribe. That way you get our weekly episodes uploaded to you every Thursday. If you have questions, discussion topics, or list ideas, maybe there's a game you want us to review, please message us on Facebook, send us an email, thelandpartners@gmail.com, or leave a comment. So we're going to go ahead and just get fired up right away. Dave, tell us what you got about Legend of Zelda on the NES.
Well, it's my pleasure, man. So basically, Legend of Zelda for NES is the very first Legend of Zelda game to exist. Shigeru Miyamoto talked about the idea of a game being like exploring a little garden inside of a game cartridge. The game was released in 1987 in North America. You could buy it today on Nintendo 3DS for $4.99 pre-tax. So basically, you play as Link, a boy who's tasked with rescuing Zelda, the princess from the Prince of Darkness, Ganon. Ganon's captured the princess and stolen the Triforce of Power. Before Zelda was captured, she fragmented the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces and hid them throughout the land of Hyrule. As Link, your task is to gather the pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom and use the Triforce to defeat Ganon. So the game is as close to an open world as you can get on an NES game. It's completely non-linear, and the reason I say it's close to an open world game is because it operates as a massive cluster of smaller tiles that all connect to each other to create this kind of larger overworld of Hyrule. The dungeons can be done in any order, and you do not need a single upgrade on Link to get to the end, or you could upgrade him as many times as you want and upgrade his weapons. It's completely up to the player. You'll get caught up in exploring the surprisingly large amount of landscapes in this game. I was very impressed, even going back and playing it, which I did not too long ago, because there's just such a variety of lands that you can traverse here. I've even consulted a game guide after getting stuck on a few parts. I actually never beat it as a child. I actually beat this game for the first time not too long ago in my 30-plus age years here.
I find that game impossible to beat without a game guide. It would
find
me someone who can do it.
Yeah,
I've been joking around and calling that thing the original Dark Souls, as you guys know, because it's truly. I mean, if you are up for a challenge, this game is definitely something that you could look into. So let's talk about my pros. The freedom of the game, I felt playing it was tremendous. I got to pretty much play the way that I wanted to, and I felt like everything was optional, but in a good way. It gave me the same feeling that I got again, but to a much grander scale in Breath of the Wild. Enemies are unique and varied. Bosses are really cool for each dungeon, and especially for an NES game, the bosses are really neat. The difficulty felt right, and I always joke around, obviously, and call it the original Dark Souls because it can be very punishing in some cases, and some dungeons will probably require you to have insane amounts of determination and possibly an online FAQ guide to get through. But it's really, really ridiculously fun. It's a really, really great game, and there's not a whole lot of cons for this one. My cons are I really wish there was more clues in the game about where to find hidden stuff. I know that, Connor, you kind of hit a brick wall where you're trying to find rupees to buy an item that would be very helpful for you to complete a dungeon.
I need 100 rupees, and I'm done. I cannot.
Yeah, you get them like 5 at a time, and it'd be really cool if there was just little characters thrown throughout the world like in Breath of the Wild, where you could just talk to everybody, all the NPCs, and they'll give you hints about where to find stuff. I thought that would have made the game a little bit better. And then I think the game needs a little bit more of the story in the game itself, because most of what you get as far as story goes comes from online research, or if you're lucky enough to have the original NES user manual, that's where I got kind of like the setup for this game. I did not play the game and know all that stuff that I introduced the game with. I actually looked online and read some of the original text from the book to get that backstory. You are thrown right into the mission when you start the game. So had you not listened to this podcast, you'd be like, what is going on? This old man tells me I need a sword. I shouldn't be going alone. So my final verdict on this thing, I give it, even by today's standards, I give this one a 9 out of 10, purely from the amount of joy that I felt actually beating it for the first time. And it still feels unique and awesome, especially with indie developers coming out with pixelated art styles and games. It feels like it could be a brand new, fantastic game made by any indie developer nowadays. So it withstood the test of time. It is not a GoldenEye. It is not, those games that are completely obsolete. This game feels good. So if you have the means to check it out, do so.
Yeah, and you hit on that indie games are starting to come back with those kind of side-scrolling or 2-bit games where Legend of Zelda still holds up better than all those new games coming out under the current kind of indie scene. So that was our retro review. The first episode of every month we'll have a special retro review of, we decided Nintendo 64 and earlier will be considered our retro games, so be expecting those the first episode of every month. So switching gears to a little bit more of a recent game. Final Fantasy 15, Matt?
Yes. So Final Fantasy 15, developed by Square Enix, no surprise. They're the same company that's developed all the Final Fantasies. Game came out November 29th, 2016, so last year. I received the game as a Christmas gift, actually, so that was a nice surprise. And a little backstory about this game, which is pretty insane. The development for this game began in 2006. It was originally supposed to come out on the PlayStation 3 as a spin-off to Final Fantasy 13. And then throughout the years, I think about in 2012, the developer decided to change completely their course of direction and say that it was going to come out for the next generation of consoles, which was the PS4 and Xbox One. And then it became Final Fantasy 15. They decided to give it its own main title. And so I thought that was kind of interesting background, that the game was in development for about 10 years, which usually history tells us is not good for a game to go through that many changes in life cycles. But as you'll see in my review, this game turned out pretty nice. So you can buy the game right now I looked at GameStop. New right now is $50. Pre-owned is $40. And then if you don't care about paying full price, you can get the digital version for the full retail $60. The things that I liked about the game, first thing that immediately stuck out to me was the combat. The combat is different. It's very different from anything I've played before. So just a quick rundown of the combat. Basically, it's a real-time battle system, but at the same time, it takes time for your attacks to recharge. So it still kind of keeps you in check in terms of you can't just mash buttons and hope you're going to kill the monster or person that you're fighting. It does take some strategy still, but the combat's very fast-paced. So you're either holding X for attack or triangle for magic, and then you can do different variations of those things mid-battle. And then a cool thing they brought into the combat was warping, so you can have your guy warp to different poles or rocks or things around the environment, get a vantage point, and get a nice attack on an enemy or get a critical hit. So I really enjoyed that part of the combat. And you can also do group attacks with the party once everyone's meters have filled up, and those do, devastating amounts of damage. Second thing I liked was the story. I thought the story was pretty cool. Basically, you're the prince of this kingdom, and no spoiler, but the king dies, your dad dies, and you're tasked with you and your friends, who are like kind of your guards, but they're also your best friends. You go on basically just a big road trip throughout the whole town. It's an open world game, and you are just trying to figure out what happened and how you can stop the evil from the kingdom. So I know it's kind of a generic story, but I just liked it. I felt engrossed in it. The third thing was that I liked was the game is absolutely beautiful. Probably along the lines, I know Dave's used this word before, but kind of a tech demo for the PS4 and probably Xbox One as well. The game turned out really well. I actually played it on my PS4 Pro, which does take advantage. The game does take advantage of that hardware. So I was able to either play at 30 frames per second at 4K or at 60 frames per second at regular 1080p. And
Which one did you play it?
I usually play it at the 60 frames per second because I like the more fluid gameplay. But it looked great in 4K as well, and it still played well. The frame rates didn't dip that tough or anything. It's still playable. Things I didn't like about the game was actually the traveling. I know a lot of other people who reviewed the game, big sites like IGN and stuff, they might disagree with me on this, but the traveling became kind of a nuisance to me. I know a lot of people felt like, because when you're in the car, you have to stay on the road. You do not have free reign of driving the car. The car stays on one path. And you can either tell the car if you want to go slower or faster, or if you want to turn at a fork in a road, which way you want to turn, but that's it. There's nothing, you can't go off-roading or anything like that. And it's cool because it's kind of cool because the group does talk to each other and banter back and forth while you're driving the car, or a member of the party might point out and say, hey, look over there, we should check that out, or something like that, which is kind of cool because they're giving you hints to check things out in the world. But after a while, it just became tedious because the car never really drove fast enough for me, and it just felt like it was taking a long time. Once you do get to new areas, though, you can fast travel. But you do have to get to that place first before you can fast travel there. So earlier in the game, the travel can be pretty much of a nuisance. Second thing I didn't like was the load times. If you're fast traveling or just starting the game up, very long load times. And I mean, once the game actually is playing and you're in it, there's no more loading really unless you're fast traveling, like I was saying. But that initial load time really got to me after a while. The game itself took me, I believe, about 27 hours to beat. Obviously, you can put way more time into this game, but I kind of decided to go straight through the story missions for the most part, and that's how long it took me to beat it. I gave the game, my final verdict, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I loved the game. I thought it was great. I loved the story, loved the combat, loved how it looked beautiful. And anyone that's interested in Final Fantasy or played Final Fantasy games before and is on the fence about this game, I would definitely say go pick it up. And I think it would be a good purchase that would not let you down.
All right. So moving on to a little bit shorter of a game, a little bit more simpler of a game. Sniper Elite 3. I played this game. It was developed by Rebellion Developments. There's not a whole lot of notable titles that I could find in their resume. It was released in July of 2014. Took me about 10 hours to beat it, but you could easily double that time with all the extra stuff that they provide for you in the gameplay. Little background on the game. It's just a third-person sniping game, as you would expect from the name, like Sniper Elite 3. The plot is that it's set in World War II, and you're just a sniper in the Africa part of World War II, and you're just trying to find secret information on this plan that's a giant weapon that's being developed, and you're just trying to infiltrate and grab these weapon plans to figure out what is this weapon that they're building. So throughout the game, you're kind of just chasing this guy, trying to figure out what the weapon is. The game design is each mission is a whole new world. There's about, I can't remember the number of missions, maybe 10 missions we'll call it, but there's about 10 missions, and each mission is an individual level where it could take you 30 minutes to beat the mission, or it could take you an hour and a half to beat the mission, because there are tons of side quests you can do. Like, for example, if the main quest was to assassinate some lieutenant, your side quest could be to destroy 3 artillery bases or find this intel documents. It's very, very similar to Metal Gear Solid 5 in that aspect, where if you've played Metal Gear Solid 5 or Ground Zeroes, where you can do that main mission, but then you could add on 30, 40, up to an hour of extra time just playing those side quests if you're really, kind of digging that sort of thing. The things I liked about it was the skeleton sniper view. And what that is, if you haven't heard of this, go on YouTube and watch this. What it is if you snipe somebody and you kill them with that shot, it goes into this slow motion, the body turns into this X-ray skeleton, and it will go into slow motion, and the bullet will penetrate wherever you shot him. And let's say I shot him in the head. fragments of skull will just pop all over. The bullet will travel through their head, then come out the other end, and it's amazing. It never gets old, and you might think, like, well, that just adds on extra time to my gameplay. I don't want to watch that 10 times. Yes, you do. Every single time, I couldn't wait to watch that, rib cage just splatter off, and then bullet heads out their back. And sometimes you could get them in a really funny position, like, let's say they're bending over, like picking up something off the ground, and you snipe them, goes through their head, then travels through their stomach, and then their bodies just crumbled. It's awesome. It never got old. I love that. That was by far one of the best features in the game. Being a sniping game, I did like going into sniper nests, and you kind of just set up camp for a little bit, like 10, 15 minutes, and there's like explosions going on. So you can just camp in there, and when an explosion goes off, shoot a guy or two. That way you're not seen or no one hears you. Wait a couple seconds, another explosion goes off, you do it again. It's tons of fun if you're into that kind of thing. It's a very stealthy game, so if you're into stealth games, then this is definitely a game for you. You have a choice to do the side objectives. Like, I was very just main mission focused because I knew I don't like stealth games, so I didn't want to overdo it in the first 5 missions, where the last 5 I'd be like, come on, let's move this thing along. I know my own gameplay style, so I knew that, okay, I'm just going to focus on the primary goal here and just get through this mission and enjoy the rest of the game, because, that happens with stealth games for me, where I just kind of get tired of walking around quietly. Oh, that guy's turning around. I got to go back the other way now. Like, I just get tired of that, so I knew to not focus on the secondary missions. Gun upgrades is fun. Being World War II sniper game, the weapons it's actually pretty sweet. I'm not a whole World War II buff or anything, but there's a lot to these weapons, and there's a lot you can do to them, whether it be adding extra scopes, or adding extra barrel or a different kind of barrel or something like that to add distance and improve accuracy, stuff like that. So that could be a lot of fun, just messing around with the guns and seeing what style works best for you. A couple things I didn't like. The story, there's not much to it. You're kind of like I said, it's a very comparable game to Metal Gear Solid 5, where you're put in this sandbox, and it's up to you how you want to do the missions. You can go left, you can go right, you can go straight on. It's up to you completely. You just have to get that objective completed. And there's not a whole lot of story inside the mission. So I just kind of wanted to see maybe like a couple, like you meet up with someone and some cutscene activates, or something like that. Just want to see a little bit more story. The story is kind of bland. You try to find these weapon plans, and then at the end there's a big payoff, but there's not a whole lot going on in between. The shooting, like if you're not shooting a sniper rifle, let's say you get spotted and you pull out like an assault rifle or something like that, whatever World War II gun you have, that it's not a great process. I preferred the handgun, I think. I think if I got spotted, I'd just pull out a handgun because the rifles weren't very accurate, I remember. But tons of fun. I had a blast playing the game because, like I said, I'm not a stealth guy, so I liked being in the sniper nest and sniping a few guys, and if I got spotted, I try to... And even if you get spotted, it's still fun just sniping people as they run at you. So it's not like it ruins the whole sniping experience, because you can still just set up somewhere and just snipe a few guys coming in, and that's skeleton x-ray. It never gets old. You go on YouTube, watch some of those videos. It's very hilarious. If you wanted to pick this game up, like I said, it's 10 hours. So it's not very long, but if you're really into it, you could make it a lot longer. You could easily get 20 hours out of it. It's only $25 at GameStop right now. If you want the whole DLC pack, it's $30. So I didn't get the DLC pack because I knew, like I said, not a stealth guy. I knew I would have been done with it by that time. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's, as we say, the 7s range is a good game, and then 8s would be great. So I'd say it's a very good game. It's a couple ways away from being great. I like to see more story and things like that I mentioned before, but it's very good. If you're into sniping and stealth, then it's definitely the game for you. All right, so moving on to our discussion topic. If Sega came back with a console, what would it be, and could it compete? So a quick little history lesson on Sega. If you don't know, Sega was Nintendo's big competition in the 90s. So they came out with Sega Genesis in 1989. The Dreamcast in 1999, which was basically the death of Sega consoles, if you ask some people. And then January 2001, they completely folded and said that they will not be making any more hardware. They will be primarily focusing on software from that point on. They're still around. They're still developing and doing the software, like I said, but they are not developing consoles. So what we want to talk about is, let's say they're like, you know what, we've been saving some money, we got some time now, let's come out with a console. Dave, what kind of console do you think Sega would bring to the table?
Oh man. So first of all, I'd love to see Sega come back with like the biggest, baddest home console ever. Do I think they could compete with Microsoft and Sony? Absolutely not. Even if they came out with something along the lines of Project Scorpio, let's say even better than that, they'd have to rely too much on their first party stuff, their most recognizable brands. And when I think of Sega, I think of Sonic and Shenmue. Yeah. Sonic's been a train wreck in recent years and will not sell a console. And they've given up exclusivity on Sonic many times, so they'd have to be taking that back. Shenmue is too dated. There's more RPGs out now. Those RPGs are better than Shenmue. So I think the only shot they would have is to compete with their old buddies Nintendo again in the hybrid console market. But even that would be a risk, considering their console would need to be A, cheaper than the Switch, B, offer greater flexibility, and C, have some kind of value to it. So would I like to see Sega in the mix? Yes, because the industry, the more competitive it is, the better that they could make other companies, and make them try harder. But do I want to see old Sega return in today's market? No. And I think that's what we would get if they came back. They would get dominated.
Matt, what do you think Sega would make, a handheld or focus on more of a console like a Wii U or something like that? Or do you think they'd go for more of the Switch route?
I think that in today's market, it probably would make more sense if they did something different. So like if they just tried to make a regular console, like Dave was saying, I think it would just fail miserably because they just don't have the fan base. They don't have anything to go off of. They don't have any first party games like he was saying. I think if they were to do something, it would probably try to ride the coattails of like bringing up the Dreamcast somehow within this new iteration of a console or handheld or whatever they would make. And I think, because I know Dreamcast had kind of a cult following, and I think the system back in the day, it did a lot of things different. I know it was kind of the demise of them in terms of hardware making, but it had some aspects to it that were a little bit ahead of its time, I would say. But I think all in all, they just couldn't support it with games. But I don't know. I feel like, like Dave was saying, Sonic is just not doing well. It's just not doing well at all. And every time I hear about a new Sonic game, I can't believe that they're still even making Sonic games. So
it's hilarious that Nintendo just laughs at it by making Mario and Sonic goes to the Olympics, and Mario and Sonic, it's like, hey, hilarious. Sonic, like you can't be anything on your own.
Welcome to Nintendo.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we'll take your IP over here. Yeah, I don't know. I think, if they were to do something, it would have to be either a hybrid, like a Switch, or just something that's not really in the market space. But it would be an incredible risk for them to come out with something new.
I feel like.
Oh, go ahead.
I think realistically, if this was a real thing, if Sega was like at E3 and next week, Sega was like, we got a big announcement, we're coming out with something. I think that something would be a handheld, only because I'm not I don't know a lot about that kind of stuff, like whether it's going to cost more or not, but I feel like they could. They're not looking good right now as it is. They might as well just go all in and like say, we'll make a handheld. If it fails, we'll just go down with it. Like I don't think they could afford to even risk a console, but I think they could afford to risk a handheld.
They should make more memory cards that operate like Tamagotchi pets. Do you guys remember those?
In the Dreamcast controller?
Yeah, they had like the screens on them.
Yeah, the little
click them in.
Yeah.
If you had Sonic, you could get like eggs or something in the egg garden, and you could take them with you. And like, there's little mini games that you play on the memory card.
I remember Resident Evil would have your health in the little screen, like your little life bar, like you were in, that little bar they give you like you're in the hospital, like you're flatlining. But
I feel like Sega's that kid that gets picked last every time for like the different teams like of video games. Like, I'll take Uncharted. Yep. Okay, we got Halo. You know what? We're gonna take Sonic. Oh wait, Nintendo, you took Sonic. Okay. Wow. Jeez. Like,
that's just, Sega.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take whatever's left.
The whole war between Nintendo and Sega in the 90s reminds me a lot of the Monday Night War in wrestling between WCW and WWE, where like they're just competing, and one time Sega's like, we're on top of the world, and then now look where they're at. They're basically working
WCW,
for Nintendo. Yeah, they're basically working for Nintendo.
Nintendo.
I mean, they're still around miraculously.
Sonic is Sting.
Sonic and Sting.
Yeah,
But I
I think it's impossible for them to make something new because they've given up any first party stuff they've had to everyone else.
I think it would be interesting. I would love to see Sega at E3 next week surprise us all and come out with something and fail miserably. But I think it'd make a fun little year or two out of it just to see what they can come up with. So we got a big news story. Speaking of Nintendo and how good they are, we have a news story that developed a little bit late last week. The Switch headset was announced. Dave's really excited. He texted me. He's like, pumped. Connor, let me talk about this. I'm dying to tell everyone about this headset. Dave, tell us about it.
Well, let me start off. I'm going to ask you listeners at home a few rhetorical questions I don't want you to answer. So have you ever been wearing a gaming headset with one or two wires or no wires and thought to yourself, man, I wish I had 3 or more cords dangling from my head? Are you sick of consoles that hold your hand in communicating with friends by giving you built-in cross-game voice chat? Or have you ever wondered what happened to those amazingly comfortable earphones that go above your ear and smash them outward and go behind your head a little bit? Well, fear not, because Nintendo has answered the call. Enter the Splatoon headset for Nintendo Switch. The only headset console combo released after 2006 that makes you hardwire 3 devices together just to talk to your friends while you play. And wondering about what you should do if you don't have a smartphone? Nintendo's got you covered. Go buy one. Thank you, Nintendo, for reminding me why we have Xbox One.
Yeah, that's Nintendo never stops amazing us with every announcement. And another Nintendo-related announcement, along with the headset. This has been a busy week for Nintendo. They came out. They announced that their online service is going to launch early 2018. It's going to be $20 a year. What do you like without the annual subscription? You don't get voice chat, I don't think. So you have to pay for the $20 if you just want a party chat with that amazing headset that Dave was just talking about. The $20 also gets you a classic library of games to choose from, like basically the NES Classic, but now on the Switch, which people who bought the NES Classic are probably like, why are they doing this? What does that do for me? Yeah, it doesn't help me out.
Why you do this to me, Nintendo?
Dave already has them all on his DS, but I think Nintendo just... I don't get them sometimes with this headset and this online. The $20 sounds nice, but it doesn't.
Well, what does it get you?
Yeah, it doesn't give you a whole
lot. What do you get for that 20? I get the ability to play with my friends without talking to them and pay for data so I can talk to them using your app that you don't have to host. Like, I don't know. Something rubs me the wrong way, and you guys know I was a huge. I was on the Switch bandwagon super hard when it first came out, and Nintendo's doing a really great job making me feel stupid about a lot of the things that I've said about the Nintendo Switch. But hopefully after E3, we get some announcements that don't make my skin crawl here. So
we can only hope, because I want to get a Switch at some point, but the way it's going, it's not looking likely if they keep this up. So that was our episode 5. Let's close this thing down with our top 3 lead characters. This is going to get crazy, guys. So if you're listening on your way to work right now, you better make sure you're fastening your seatbelt. Yeah, might want to. Actually, you know what? Don't drive, because you might want to just pull over. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. I can't remember who went first last week. I think Matt did. So Dave, how about you start us off with your number 3 lead character?
My number 3 lead character all time is Joel from The Last of Us.
Ooh, yes.
I'm not gonna ruin the story of The Last of Us if you haven't played it yet. He's just a character that I think is unique to almost every other main character that you play. So check that game out for sure.
I like the call. Yeah, Matt.
That's a good call. My number 3 is Link from Zelda. I know he's a non-talking protagonist, but I just always thought he was such a bad dude, like he just always was this hero and adventurer and didn't back down from anything. So I could always just put myself into his role.
Iconic, recognizable.
Oh yeah, big time. My number 3, Jimmy Hopkins. Matt, name that game.
Bully.
That's right. Jimmy Hopkins is my number 3. I think with Bully and Jimmy Hopkins, I think he's the interesting character because he almost comes in as a villain. and you kind of have to turn him into the good guy. He comes in as like a bully, as the name would say. So he comes in as this bully, and it's just fun being the bully at first, but then he kind of feels bad for the nerds and kind of goes to war with the jocks and everything. Or he actually goes to war with the nerds also, but then befriends them. And so it's just a lot of fun playing as Jimmy Hopkins because you're kind of playing as the villain half the game, and it's really cool. Dave, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Solid Snake. Metal Gear Solid, man. Numbers 1, 2, and 4. Solid Snake. No explanation necessary, man. The guy's legendary.
You're gonna need some explaining to why he's not your number 1 because I had that pegged at number 1.
Was that where you pegging him as my number 1?
For sure. So I'll be surprised.
I love me some Metal Gear, and Solid Snake, man. He's the coolest. I do love that guy. Not the coolest, though. I'll tell you who the coolest
he's number 2 coolest. Matt, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Titus from Final Fantasy X. So you can name your own character in that game, but the default is Titus. So that's kind of what he's known as. But I loved Final Fantasy X so much. That's one of the only games I've beaten like 10 times in my life. And I think
Final Fantasy X for 10.
Yeah, he just felt like someone you could relate to almost, with, even though it was obviously a fantasy that he was going through, but I love him as a lead character.
Nice. My number 2 is Wei Shen. Matt, name that game.
Wei Shen, Sleeping Dogs.
Sleeping Dogs, that's right. Wei Shen, he's awesome. He is this undercover cop, and he gets involved with such a crazy storyline between the triads and the cops, and it's just like you have to make so many. He has to make so many tough decisions throughout the game, and he knows karate. He's awesome. He was a lot of fun. Yeah. Just the whole storyline between the two angles that he has to go through and all the difficult situations he gets himself into. There's no character that I've ever played as where it's been that interesting. Where are we at right now? Dave, number 1?
Number 1. My number 1, and grab your seats, boys. Here we go. My number 1 is Nico from Grand Theft Auto 4. Wow.
I think I saw Connor's heart drop.
Yeah.
I got you.
I felt it.
Please, guys, can we... were you thinking for a second this was the worst main characters list for a second? Okay. No, but for real, 110%. Solid Snake's my number 2. But the original Naked Snake, Venom Snake, Big Boss.
Oh, okay.
Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, Ground Zeroes, and Phantom Pain. I'm going to say Big Boss, number 1.
Oh.
I knew there was going to be Metal Gear at number 1. That's why I didn't believe your number 2. Matt, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series. I've always been a huge fan of like that type of genre, Indiana Jones style adventurer, and he's got the comedy on top of all the action and stuff that he goes through, and I just can't get enough of him. I wish they would just keep making Uncharted forever.
Very, very true. My number 1 is Kratos of the God of War series. There is no character cooler than Kratos.
Now Dave's heart dropped.
He cannot be beat. Find me someone who could defeat gods the way Kratos does. He fights every god in his path, good or bad, and he says, I'm going to kill you, and he does. Hades.
That's true.
And he does.
He only needs one combo to beat all of his games. It's incredible.
Square, triangle
takes
for
a
life,
special
man.
character for that.
I will take square, triangle for life. Kratos is the best. No one can deny Kratos is how good he is. We got about an extra minute here. So Dave is in an NBA 2K17 online league. Dave, real fast, who is your starting 5?
I don't need an entire starting 5. I've got my guard backcourt here. I got Kyrie Irving playing point for me, and I've got Dwayne Wade playing my 2G spot, and they're tearing it up. It's looking real good for my team. I don't know if you're going to mention this, but I am going to be streaming a little bit of that once we get to the playoffs. So on Twitch, you'll be able to find me. We'll throw something in like the video description or on Facebook or something like that. And you guys can come watch me try to make it through the playoffs. I just clinched playoffs yesterday. with my 9th win of the season. So
Sweet.
we do 14 games.
We'll be looking forward to seeing that. Keep an eye on the Facebook page. We'll be posting whenever Dave does get into the playoffs when he's going to start playing those games. But also, get on our Facebook. Tell us who your favorite lead character is of any game. We'd love to hear from the listeners. So that was episode 5. Again, hit that subscribe button on iTunes or Stitcher. That way it'll get uploaded right to you. So on your way to work Thursday morning, you could just listen to us, get you into work, start your day off on a good note. So thanks for listening.